welcome to today's podcast. I'm Alex Keane, and with me is my co-host Celestine.
And I'm Celestine. Today we're diving into one of the biggest questions aspiring programmers ask.
Celestine, let's start with a classic debate. If someone is just starting out, what would you say is the best programming language for beginners?
If we're talking about absolute beginners, I'd argue Python is the best starting point. Its syntax is simple, it reads like English, and it's versatile enough to be used in everything from web development to artificial intelligence.
That makes sense. But what about JavaScript? Some say it's an ideal first language because you can see results instantly in the browser without setting up a complex development environment.
That's true. JavaScript has a low barrier to entry, and it's essential for web development. But here's the thing, JavaScript can be tricky for beginners because of its quirks, like implicit type coercion and asynchronous behavior. Python, on the other hand, enforces better coding habits right from the start.
Fair point. Now, if we fast forward to 2025, would Python still hold the title for the easiest language to learn? Or is there something even more beginner-friendly now?
I'd say Python is still dominant, but newer languages like Scratch and even educational tools like Blockly have gained traction. Also, languages like Swift Playgrounds make programming more interactive, but for general-purpose programming, Python remains the best because of its massive community support.
Speaking of choosing a first language, people always ask, what programming language should I learn first? How would you answer that if someone came to you today?
I'd say it depends on their goals. If they want to get into web development, JavaScript is non-negotiable. If they're interested in data science, Python is the way to go. If they want to dive into mobile development, Swift for iOS and Kotlin for Android are the best choices. It all comes down to what they want to build.
That's solid advice. But let's talk about time. People often ask, how long does it take to learn a programming language? What's a realistic expectation?
That depends on the depth of learning. If you just want to write basic scripts, you could get comfortable with a language like Python in a few weeks. But if you want to master it, understand algorithms, design patterns, and best practices, it can take months or even years. The key is consistency.
And that brings me to another tough one. What's the hardest programming language to learn?
Oh, that's a fun one. If we're talking about complexity, languages like C++ and Rust are tough because they demand a deep understanding of memory management and system architecture. But if you really want a challenge, I'd say languages like Haskell or Prolog, which follow different paradigms like functional programming and logic-based reasoning, can be mind-bending for those coming from imperative languages.
So basically, if someone wants to challenge themselves, they should try Rust, Haskell, or something low-level like assembly.
Exactly. But for beginners, I'd say stick with Python, JavaScript, or even Ruby to get comfortable with the fundamentals.
Let's shift gears to web development. What's the best programming language for web development in 2025?
It's still JavaScript. With frameworks like React, Vue, and Svelte, JavaScript continues to dominate the front end. On the back end, we have Node.js, but Python with Django and Flask, or even PHP with Laravel, is still widely used.
What about full stack development? Should someone stick to one language or mix and match?
Ideally, knowing both front end and back end is crucial. But if you want a streamlined experience, JavaScript with Node.js lets you use the same language across the stack. However, for performance-heavy applications, mixing JavaScript with something like Python or Go can be a smarter choice.
Now let's talk AI. What's the best programming language for AI and machine learning?
Python hands down. Libraries like TensorFlow, PyTorch, and scikit-learn have made it the go-to language for AI development. Its ease of use, combined with a massive ecosystem, makes AI research and deployment more accessible.
But what about alternatives? R is popular for statistical computing, and Julia is gaining traction for high-performance computing.
True. R is excellent for statistics-heavy applications, and Julia is powerful for numerical computing. But for general AI, Python still leads because of its integration with machine learning frameworks and cloud platforms.
Since we're in 2025, what would you say are the top programming languages this year?
Python is still huge, JavaScript remains essential, and Rust is becoming a serious player, especially in system programming. TypeScript is practically a must for web dev now. And Go is big in cloud computing.
So a well-rounded developer in 2025 should know Python, JavaScript, and maybe Rust or Go?
Exactly. Those languages cover everything from web to AI to system-level programming.
How do you help someone choose the right programming language for their project?
First, define the project goals. Is it a website? Use JavaScript. A data-heavy application? Use Python. A high-performance system? Go with Rust or C++. Scalability and community support also matter.
And what about compiled versus interpreted languages? Can you break that down?
Sure. Compiled languages like C++ and Rust translate code into machine code before execution, making them faster. Interpreted languages like Python and JavaScript execute line by line, which makes debugging easier but often runs slower.
So it's a trade-off between speed and ease of use?
Exactly. Compiled languages are better for performance-critical applications, while interpreted languages are great for rapid development.